This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, and also keep in mind, like this, we get to eat all that cake by ourselves, right? So that's another thing to keep in mind. Okay, so last week Acharei-Mot, this week Kedoshim. So a couple of things I'd like to touch upon. Acharei-Mot is a wild parsha, right? It began on page 636, right? And basically, it deals with the whole Yom Kippur service, okay? And all that we do on Yom Kippur, our davening, the whole Musaf on Yom Kippur is it's called the Seder HaAvoda, going through the divine service of Yom Kippur. And then the end of the Parsha, starting on page 648, goes into the forbidden sexual relationships. And it seems sort of jarring to go from Yom Kippur to forbidden sexual relationships. It seems like a very jarring juxtaposition of topics. But as some of you might be thinking, actually, if you look at our Yom Kippur itself, on Yom Kippur itself, what do we read? In the morning, we read about the Yom Kippur service. And what is the Torah reading that's done on Yom Kippur itself in the afternoon at Mincha? Right, we read Torah, of course, between Shacharit and Musaf, as we do every Shabbos in Yom Tov. And on some days, namely Shabbat and Yom Kippur, we also read Torah at Mincha. What do we read? What is the Torah reading of Mincha Yom Kippur? Forbidden sexual relationships. So not only do we have this jarring juxtaposition in Parshas Acharei-Mot, but we actually take that and bring it into our day of Yom Kippur. Imagine that. Yom Kippur. It's already been Mincha time. It's about 3 hours. Yeah, I usually time it about 3 hours, 2.5 hours before the end of the fast. So we're a good 20 plus hours into our fasting. And the men are wearing the white kittles, and no eating and no drinking and all this. And we spent all this time in shul. We are like, and the whole idea of Yom Kippur atoning, when we say Itzumo shel Yom, the essence of the day itself atones. What that means is that ideally the day lifts us up to a certain vantage point that we look back at things that we did and say, that wasn't me. That's not representative of me. What was I thinking? That's not what I'm about. We're up at this point where we're looking back and looking down on things we've done and saying, oh, I don't identify with that. That's not truly who or what I am. And then we're ready for Torah reading, and what do we hear? Bestiality. I mean, like, whoa. Why? Why would we choose to read? It's one thing, Parsha Acharei-Mot, God wrote the Torah, and Moshe wrote the Torah based on God's dictation, right? So, okay, God put it here, we'll have to understand that. But here we are choosing what we should be reading, what we should be focusing on. Why do we have that focus? Why bring in this arayot, the forbidden relationships, on Yom Kippur at the height? We're about to go into Ne'ilah, right? Ne'ilah is the zenith of the whole Yom Kippur davening. Arayas, forbidden relationships. Esther, Shulamit, what would you say?
I would say it's a reminder that we all have the neshama the animal soul, we
Mhm.
still, and we're still, even though we're elevated spiritually, we still have that within us. It's like a reminder that you think you're above this, well, you never know, kind of.
Okay. Okay, I like that. Other ideas out there? Good. Yes. So let me just expand a little bit on what Esther said. We are a combination of guf and neshama, of body and soul. And we should never feel, on one hand, that I am so immersed in bad stuff I can't get out. Don't forget, there is that neshama, and you could soar to the greatest heights. The Rambam writes so beautifully about a Baal Teshuva, a person who does Teshuva. That 1 minute the person is mekushatz, mitzuav, despised, this, and a person then does Teshuva, and bang, that person is a kadosh elyon, is a lofty. A man marries a woman, almanat, on the condition that I am a tzaddik, that I am perfectly righteous. We have to say it's a good kedushin. What do I mean? This guy's a tzaddik. Well, maybe at that moment he had this hirhure teshuva, these thoughts, these feelings of teshuva, and yes, at that moment he fulfilled the condition, right? At the same time, the Gemara has an expression: from the highest roof to the lowest pit. At the same time, a person can be at the highest level and can go plummeting down so fast and so hard. Look at Am Yisroel by Har Sinai, right? And then it wasn't all that long afterwards, about 40 days, give or take. That was the problem, that we have the Chet HaEgel, the sin of the golden calf. And a person can be, and on Yom Kippur, we have to recognize that we shouldn't feel like, that will never happen. Yes, Esther.
And isn't it also understood that the more elevated you get, the more challenge there is from your Yetzer Hara?
Okay, so that is a true fundamental teaching. That I'm sorry. Okay. So right. So Esther had said, and Aaron's asking about this idea that the higher level a person is, the greater the Yetzer Hara becomes, and an understanding in that is that there always needs to be challenge. That's what this world, we had that in Chovos Vavos last night. That's what this world is all about. The reason we are here is for a challenge. The same way in a physical sense, no pain, no gain, only through resistance. So too in a spiritual, emotional, psychological sense, no pain, no gain. It's only there's going to be resistance. So if I am on the lofty level, then what am I struggling with? Oh, it must be that I have to struggle equally hard. Remember, we discussed, I think we mentioned before, I believe it was in this class, that the Gemara tells us that at a certain point, the men of the Great Assembly prayed to Hashem, take away this Yetzer Hara of idolatry. Right? The whole thing, it's there for us to overcome and get reward. Well, it's not working. We keep succumbing to it. We keep getting blown away by this. Take it away. And the Gemara says that Hashem answered their tefillah, and that answer to the tefillah was represented by a fiery lion. They saw a fiery lion shooting out of the Kodesh Kadashim, shooting out of the Holy of Holies. What's going on? What's going on? The Yetzer Hara for Avodah Zarah is in the Holy of Holies, is in the Kodesh Kadashim. Right? What's it doing over there? But an explanation that's given is that if the Yetzer Hara for Avodah Zarah is being taken away, then we can't have the passion for true holiness staying where it was, and the desire for that contorted holiness, that corrupted holiness to come down, in that case, there is no challenge. So if we're taking away the Yetzer Hara of Avodah Zarah, then what has to happen? The fire, the passion needs to leave the Kodesh Kadashim, the Holy of Holies. And that way, there will still be this level playing field, the Zel Umat Zeh, it's called, this across from that. And that's how we still have the challenge. And that's why we see that people say, oh, I don't understand. What was the big deal about idolatry? Why were they so drawn to it? Right? It's a good question. And ask the same person, are you drawn to shul? Are you drawn to davening? Are you drawn to the kotel? Are you drawn to holiness? No. So you don't understand. Not you, we don't understand this passion for Kedusha, for a holiness. By Mount Sinai, Moshe was told, and told again, you've got to encircle the mountain. Otherwise, why? Because no one's allowed to go up the mountain. I already told them not to. No, that's not enough. They're going to be drawn. They're going to be drawn to that holiness. That's how we are meant to be. But if we're drawn to holiness, we'll also be drawn to this corrupted brand of the holiness of Avodah Zarah. So there always needs to be that balance. And that's why, Esther, as you said, and Aaron, as you pointed out, the idea that the greater a person is, the Yetzer Hara also needs to be upgraded. Otherwise, there's no challenge. If there's no challenge, there's no resistance. If there's no resistance, there's no growth. And that, as we saw last night in Chavos Havavos, that is really the purpose of coming into this world first. Okay, this is where we need to be. So yes, on Yom Kippur, we have to remember that we cannot be complacent and say, oh, there's no way. Even though we do have the concept of Rav Dessler that he calls the Nekudat HaBechira, which is the point of a person's free will. I make a good decision, I'm over here now. Draw a circle around that. This is how good a thing I'll consider doing. Beyond that, that's too much for me. Draw that circle, the bottom half of the circle. That's how low I might be able to go. Lower than that, nah, I would never do that. Okay, now I make my next choice. If it's a good choice, I redraw the circle. That which was beyond me before is now I can consider. That which was that I could have considered before on the bad side, no, I would never do that. Make a bad decision, move the point down, redraw the circles. That which a moment ago you considered doing, nah, I'm not going to do that. That's too much for me. That which I never would have, I'd never do something like that. Well, maybe. I can consider it. Yeah. But nevertheless, so even though we do have that in the Nekudat HaBechira, but we do find times where we can just have a precipitous drop. Actually, the Gemara asks, or I'm not sure, the Bali Musar asks, there's a teaching that we have, Kach he darko shi. This is the way of the Yetzer Hara. Today he'll tell you to do this. Next day he'll tell you to do that. Then that, and ultimately go worship idolatry. Meaning it's a slow progression. That's how we get moved along. So they ask, so what happened by Har Sinai? How we go from Mount Sinai to the sin of the golden calf? That's not a slow, gradual progression or descent, right? That's a precipitous drop. How does that happen? Oh, because we were in a state of panic. We were in a state of bihilut. We didn't have a settled mind, a settled state of mind. And once a person is in a frenzy, all heck can break loose. At that point, all bets are off. There, a person go from there down to there. And that's why it's so important when we are in a disrupted state, not to make big decisions. We always counsel people, right? If they just lost a loved one, right? Don't make any big decisions in terms of where you're going to live, what you're going, just let things settle a little bit. Because when we are in the state of bihilut, of confusion, of unsurety, when we're off, right, when we're off balance, that's when it's very easy to fall. When we're off balance. When we're standing straight, we're not going to fall. We're off balance, then you don't know what's going to happen.
So,
Okay.
Rabbi, similarly, on the opposite end of the spectrum, that doesn't completely resonate with me that you always have to have a challenge or a bad thing before you. Couldn't you have some experience that gives you, that was relatively innocuous, but somehow you get an aha moment out of it, like aha, and that makes everything relatively easy to progress to another stage or level that's good?
Yes, we will have our aha moments and our times of clarity, all right? And we'll have our times where everything is going beautifully, davening is going beautifully, relationships are going beautifully, things are going, and we also have the times where we get entangled and it's hard to daven and it's hard to relate and it's hard, right? I'm not saying that every moment there is that, but in life we always have to have these challenges.
So
Otherwise,
I still don't. It still doesn't resonate that you always have to have this increasing Yetzer Hara to have this passion, or, you could be grateful enough for everything that impassions you,
yes, yes. And therefore
and
you're choosing to be grateful, you're choosing to focus on the positive, and therefore you're not allowing these other thoughts and diversions to come in. That's a decision that you are making, right? But put down your guard, and then you might have some challenges along the way.
I
Yeah,
see.
I'm not saying every second.
And then total non sequitur between the avodah of the Kohen and the forbidden relationships. There is one thing in Acharei that is the most puzzling to me, where on the offerings of Bnei Yisrael, and this is the page 647. This is the matter that Hashem has commanded, saying, any man from the house of Israel who will slaughter a bull, a sheep, or a goat in the camp, or will slaughter it outside the camp, and he has not brought it to the entrance of the tent of meeting to bring it as an offering to Hashem before the tabernacle of Hashem, it shall be considered as bloodshed for that man. He has shed blood, and that man shall be cut off from his people. So no one could slaughter in the
You have to
prescribed
see the
manner and
Rashi.
doesn't have.
This is talking about a sacrifice, an animal that was consecrated as a sacrifice, and then it's
But
being
it
brought
doesn't
outside.
say that. It says
That's
anything, and it
that's what
goes on
Rashi
and
says.
on.
B'mukdashim hakosim medaber, shenem lahakriv korban. Right. The pasuk says, right, if you will shecht, right, the next verse, vel petach o moed, right? And to the Petah Omai, Lo Yivi, he did not bring it. Lahakriv Korban LaHashem. So this was meant to be a Korban LaHashem. And you did not bring this Korban LaHashem to Hashem. Elsewhere, the Torah tells us that we can slaughter outside the Beis HaMikdash. Right? What is this telling us? This is talking about Lahakriv Korban LaHashem, an animal that had been designated, consecrated as a sacrifice, and now you're bringing it outside the Beis HaMikdash. That's what this is referring to, John.
Okay, I see the next sukkim, but it doesn't.
It's
The
not
more
but.
general
It's not.
opening.
That's what this is talking about, Janet. Elsewhere, the
Okay,
Torah talks about sacrificing and no problem at all, right? It talks about slaughtering, right? So therefore, it talks about slaughtering outside. There's no prohibition against slaughtering outside. This is talking about, as Pasuk Dal, it says, "Lahakriv korban laHashem," that which was meant to have been brought as a sacrifice to Hashem, and you bring it outside. Okay, let's go to Kedoshim, page 656, this week's Parsha. Moshe spoke to Moshe saying, Daber, speak, El Kol Adat B'nai Yisrael, to the entire assembly of the children of Israel. V'amar Talehem, and say to them, Kedoshim Tihiyu, you shall be holy. Ki kadosh ani Hashem Elokeichem. So first of all, this is to me, this is the most fundamental idea of Judaism, that holiness is not something for the rabbis, for the holy people, for the leaders, but this is for each and every person. Each and every person, right? Back before by Paro and Moshe. So Paro finally says, "All right, you can go out to worship your God, bring sacrifices, go." Miva miholchim, Paro asks, who is going to go? Moshe's answer is bin areinu biskanenu. Good morning again. With our young, with our old, with our women and the children. Blah, blah, blah. And Paro says, "No, that's not what you asked for." What do you mean? What do you mean that's not what you asked for? Well, Paro heard Moshe asking that we want to go out and sacrifice. And in the Paro mindset, the Paro world, who does that? So that is sort of like who runs, right? Who runs the United States of America? White males, 6 feet, right, with at least some gray hair, right? That's who runs for president, right? Hillary, sorry. Okay, but basically that is who fits the mold. And in the Paro mindset, who does the sacrificing? It is the men, the older men, the priests. They're the ones who do that. Moshe says, no. Ki chag la'Hashem lanu. It's chag for Hashem for us. We are all in it. With Judaism, everyone is in. It's a family affair. Everyone is commanded, Kedoshim tihiyu. You shall be holy. Rashi understands Kedoshim, holiness, is manifested when a person is careful with their sexual life. That is where Kedusha comes from. Ramban views it in a more general way and speaks about the concept of a menuval b'shut haTorah. A menuval is a scoundrel, a lowlife, who stays b'shut haTorah, who stays within the parameters of the Torah. But the person is not a good, not a nice person. He is a menuval, he's a low life. But he's not breaking anything clearly, explicitly. And the Ramban says that being that Hashem could not go into every single detail of our life, of our dealings, therefore, what does Hashem do? He gives us this general injunction. Kedoshim tihiyu. You've got to lift yourselves up. You've got to make yourself as godly as you can. Why? Ki kadosh ani Hashem Elokeichem. Because I, Hashem, your God, I am kadosh. And I believe it's over here that the Or HaChaim, I'm not sure if it's on this pasuk or elsewhere, right? When he's talking about the different he speaks about the idea, right? Hashem is holy, right? At first glance, it doesn't make sense. A father says to his son, right? You should be a great basketball player. Why? Because I'm a good basketball player. Okay, that's you. What does that have to do with me? Right? God, you are holy. Great. You're God. How does that mean? How does that translate into, I've got to be holy because God is holy? Yeah, well, God is God and I'm Ciner, right? And what does one have to do with the other? But elsewhere he explains that every time we do a mitzvah, then God's presence is resting upon us. And he shows that from the word mitzvah. I've mentioned this before, but it bears repeating. Mitzvah, spelled mem, tzadi, vav, hey. Now, he says God's name is there. in mitzvah. Is it? Well, let's hear. Vav Hey, the last two letters of the word mitzvah, are the last two letters of God's ineffable name. We don't pronounce it, but it's written Yud, followed by a Hey, followed by a Vav, followed by a Hey. Yes. So the last two letters are there of God's name. How about the first two letters? So he explains there is a concept called atbash. Atbash is that when we have a reflection of the letter, atbash, aleph taf, first letter, last letter, bash, second letter from the beginning, second letter from the end. So there's a way of viewing the reflection of the letter, right? The reflection. Mem is, let's hear, mem to the end. Mem, nun, samach, ayin, pei, tzadi, kuf, resh, shin, taf. Mem is the 10th letter from the end. What is its atbash reflection? 10th letter from the beginning. Yud. Oh, tzadi, kuf, resh, shin, taf. Tzadi is the 5th letter from the end. What is its atbash reflection? The 5th letter from the beginning. Hey. So what do you have? We have, every time we do a mitzvah, we get this reflection of Yud Vav K on us. So God's not just saying, you should be holy because I'm holy. God is saying, and that goes on to say, keep these mitzvot, do these mitzvot. It's like the Father saying, I am a great basketball player. Whenever you shoot, I'm going to be right there with you, guiding your hands to take that shot the right way. That's what Hashem is saying. Ki kadosh ani Hashem Elokechem. I am holy, and I'm there with you. When you do the right things, I'm there, right there with you, carrying you through, putting myself onto you. Yes.
Is it fair to say too that Hashem himself not necessarily does these mitzvot, but that's part of who he is? In other words, when we are doing them, we're kind of patterning ourselves after him.
Okay. We wouldn't say God does the mitzvot. That's bringing him down here. We would say that the mitzvot are instructions that he gave us to help make us godly. Okay? And there are different categories, right? The mitzvot of kindness, of chesed. So there, yes. Mahu rachum, as he's compassionate, afata, you need to be. Mahu chanun, so to you. Yes, so when the mitzvah that are acts of compassion, those are clearly a godly-like acts. And then we also have those mitzvah, we just had Pesach, which are there as edut, as testimony that we, a testimony to our beliefs and to our identifying ourselves as part of this nation. Right? We mentioned, with all that's going on in the world today, right? The Russia of the Seder, right? What makes him this Russia? Is it that he's not observing one of the mitzvot? Is that why he's categorized as the Russia? No. What categorizes him as the Russia? He removes himself. He renounces his Judaism. Ma voda zot lachem. He excludes himself from the nation. That is what categorizes the son, the Russia son, the evil son of the Haggadah. It's not whether he's keeping this ritual mitzvah, that ritual mitzvah. Is he eating this hechsher or eating that hechsher? That's not what it's about. Is he a part of Am Yisrael or not a part of Am Yisrael? So the Edut mitzvot are there to show our belief. We always say, Rav Moshe says this, Shabbos is our belief in God as the creator. holidays, our belief in God as the orchestrator of events involved in this world, right? So the edut or that, the chukim are those that the reason was not shared with us in order for us to recognize that it's not that we can't understand God, as we discuss often. And the same way we can't understand God when it comes to this mitzvah, that mitzvah, we also can't necessarily understand God when it comes to events in our life, challenges that we have, all that which is going on in the world today and in our lives today. Okay. But then we go on, and it's fascinating because this list is such a diverse list. Let's go, just look in our stone Chumash, page 657, on the outside column where we have the English. It lists holiness, then it's honoring parents, Sabbath, idols, and then 659, Pegel, rejected offerings, gifts to the poor, honest dealings with others. In other words, Kedusha for Jews, for Am Yisrael, is not simply in the meditation on the top of a mountaintop and these ritualistic acts. It has to filter down into how do I deal with my friends, with my family, with my brothers and sisters, with my spouse, with my kids. It has to filter down into how we deal with others. And that is where the Kedusha, where the true holiness comes out. Let's turn to a couple of things I wanted to touch upon. Very, very famous, probably one of the most famous lines of the Torah is V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, to love your fellow as yourself. Let's see on page 660. Well, let's get there. Let's look at first, that's verse 18. Let's first look at Pasuk Yud Zayin, verse 17. And it says there, Lo tisna et achicha bil vavecha. Do not hate your brother in your heart. Hocheach, tochiach et amitecha. What should you do? Hocheach, tochiach. You should give reproof. You should rebuke your fellow. Velotisa alav chet. Do not carry a sin upon him. Next verse, and we'll break it down. Lo tikom, do not take revenge. Velo titor, and do not harbor this grudge. Et b'nei amecha, the people of your nation. Rather, v'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. Love your fellow as yourself. Ani Hashem. I am Hashem. Lo tisnat achicha bilvavecha. Don't hate your brother in your heart. Rather, what should you do? If he's done something to cause you to feel hatred, don't hate him in your heart. Rather, what should you do? Both the Ramban or Achaim say, what should you do? The next part of the pasuk. What should you do? Speak to him. Hocheach tochiach et amitecha. Right? If you're going to hate him in your heart, then you've already judged the whole situation. And that person is guilty. So what are you doing? You're carrying a sin on that person. You've decided this person is sinful. He's done this thing to me, or done this thing to someone else, and I hate this person for it. This person is bad. He's deserving of my hatred. I'm carrying on him a hate. I am deciding. I am judge, jury, witnesses. I'm all in one over here. And I'm putting this hate on that person. Don't do that. Don't keep it in your heart. Rather, what should you do? Hocheach tochiach. Rather, you should say maybe there's a reason. Give him the benefit of the doubt, judge him well, and what should you do? Have a sit down, have a face-to-face. And then, ideally, he will explain what happened, explain why he did or she did or didn't do what they did, and that way you'll understand, oh, I misunderstood. I misunderstood. Or the person will say, wow, I didn't realize that it hurt you like that. I feel terrible. I am so sorry. And that way, right, a person will recognize the need to be more careful. But so often, we say something and we mean it in a certain way, and someone hears it, they hear it otherwise. Just over Pesach, I had such a beautiful example. Not beautiful, it could have been bad, but a beautiful example of that. I was talking to somebody, and I asked, oh, do you daven at, person not from Irvine was visiting, do you daven at so-and-so shul? Because I'm friendly with the rabbi there. And the person said, yes, I do. End the conversation, so I thought. However, what was going on in this person's mind is that this person leads the davening as a chazan at a faster pace than usual, than most. So he came up to me a few days later and asked and said, Rabbi, why did you ask if I'm the chazan at if I lead davening at so and so shul? Is because I go too fast, and you were wondering if it's too fast for them also? And I said, I never asked you if you're the chazan over there. What I asked you is, do you daven at that shul? But he in his mind, how did he hear that? Do you daven, meaning do you lead the davening there? Because he was coming from a certain point, oh, I'm going too fast here. The rabbi's not happy. Now he's asking if I daven there. He must be asking me, do I lead services there? Because it's too, right? Everyone interprets what they hear based on what's going on in their mind. And I say what I say based on what's going on in my mind. And very often there is this two ships passing in the night. Therefore, the pasuk says, don't keep it in your heart. If you're upset, you think somebody wronged you, hocheach tochir tamitecha, v'lo tisa alav chet. Right? Don't incriminate him and say, oh, this person's terrible, right? And keep that in your heart. At the same time, when you rebuke him, don't do it in a sinful manner. Meaning, don't do it publicly. Don't do it in a way that will embarrass that person, in a way that's going to add fuel to the fire, right? Don't come to him as a sinner. What's the matter with you? What were you thinking? Right? Come to him saying, I know you're a very sensitive, caring person. And I was surprised when you fill in the blank. When you said this to me, or said, well, I heard you said this about me, or when you did this, right? Lo tisa alav chet. So 3 levels of this. Don't keep it in your heart and say, he's a sinner, I'm not about to talk to him. Rather go talk to him. When you do it, don't do it in a way that you will be causing a sin for yourself in embarrassing him or her by bringing it up in front of others. And don't do it in a way that that person is a sinner. Because if you think, nah, I got this. I don't need to talk to the person. It's okay. I'm just not going to. It's okay. I can let it go. Well, what's the next thing the pasuk says? Lo tikom v'lo titor. You think you got it, but it's going to come out. What you have in your heart at some point is going to come out. And therefore the next thing is lo tikom. Do not take revenge. Right? The person comes to you, right? Can I have this? Can you have that? When I came to you, you closed the door on me. Now you're coming to me. Get out of here. All of a sudden it's going to burst out. Or lo titor. Can I have this? Yeah, I'm not like you. I'm not like you. I'll give it to you. Yeah, you can have it. You wouldn't lend it to me. I'll lend it to you. No problem. What does it mean? There is a problem, right? Because that which a person keeps in their heart, I always say, it is corrosive. It is corrosive. It is going to eat away at you. Once we can do that, then we could reach the point of the ahavta l'reacha kamocha. Then we could reach that point of loving others kamocha. Now, what does that mean, love others like yourself? Ramban says, you see his wording is so beautiful. Haflaga. This is beyond. Atamaflig. Right? This is beyond. Ki lo yikabel lev adam. A person's heart cannot accept. She'ehov et chaveiro ka'avato et nafsho. That you love someone else like you love yourself. Right? Rabbi Akiva already taught, chayecha kodem. You come first. Famously, you're walking in the desert with someone else and you got a canteen with enough water for one person. You split it in half, you're both going to die. What do you do with it? You drink it. Chayecha kodem. Right? So what's the v'ahavta l'reacha kamocha? So he explains it to mean, right? And I always say, you look at a group photo. Where does your eye go to first? Yourself. Right? I remember when I was teaching high school, right? You show a group photo, all of a sudden you hear 10 girls say at once, "I look terrible." It's like this synchronized to the second. I look terrible, right? We look for ourselves, right? So what is meant by v'ahavta l'reacha kamocha? See, he explains that what you would want for yourself, that's what you should try for others. You want respect. You want a good parnasa. You want friends. What you want for yourself, then you should want that for others. Kamocha. The same way. Right? But as is often pointed out, a person has to love themselves. Right? Only then can I want good for others. Can I love others like myself? Right? A person needs to have a healthy, realistic self-image that they appreciate. Not that we don't see our own faults. We certainly know our own faults better than anyone else does. But bottom line, v'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. There's another point I want to touch upon, and it's a little bit of a controversial point, but I think it's important. Both at the end of Acharei-Mot, where we had the warnings against forbidden sexual relationships. Not that I know of.
Ori and Tanya Constantine?
I'm sorry?
Ori and Tanya Constantine?
At Beth Jacob?
I mean, is there a Chabad in here also?
Maybe up by the Sephardim? There's a Sephardic minion upstairs.
Maybe. 3900 Michelson Drive.
You got the right address. Then try. If you go through this door,
Okay.
and then across the building there, up the steps, we have a Sephardic minion there also. That might be happening over there.
All right, thank you so much.
Sure. So Acharei Mot spoke about the prohibition against, and Kedoshim speaks about the repercussions, the punishment, or the result of these relationships. And that one other thing also I wanted to say before we get to that, right? We said over here, "B'tzedek tishpot amitecha." Yeah, if you go back to verse 15 on the same page, right? Verse 15. Lo taseh alvo b'mishpat. Don't distort judgment. Lo tisa p'nei dal. Don't carry the face, favor the poor person. Meaning, a poor person, a rich person, come to me for judgment. I might say, listen, the rich guy is right, but I'm gonna have to go to him anyhow to ask for some money from him to help the poor person. So let me let me rule in favor of the poor person, and finished. All's good. That way he'll be taken care of. You can't do that. Lo terda p'nei gadol. On the other hand, I can't say the poor person is right. How can I insult this powerful rich person? I'll rule in his favor, and then I'll tell him afterwards, really, he was right. Give him the money. None of that. But tzedek tishpon amitecha. You've got to judge properly. But our sages say, in these words, to judge properly, that you have to dan l'chaf zuchut. You have to judge a person, not just the judges, but we're all judges, and we all have many, many interactions. Judge other people favorably. It's often mistranslated as give them the benefit of the doubt. We're not giving the benefit of the doubt because we say the same way that you should judge others favorably, Hashem will judge you favorably. Well, God has no doubt. So it can't mean the same way you give them the benefit of the doubt, God will give you the benefit of the doubt. That can't be what it means. There's no doubt by God. What does it mean? When you judge someone else favorably, you focus on the positive aspects, positive components. And if you'll focus on the positive aspects, components, then Hashem will look at you and will focus on your positive aspects and components. Okay. One of the sexual misadventures, prohibitions, is homosexuality. And the Torah calls that a to'eva. It's an abomination. Many people say, abomination. You know what else the Torah calls an abomination? Having false weights, meaning deceiving people in business. False weights. The Torah also calls that to'eva, an abomination. You know what it says? It also says, lo tochal kol to'eva. Don't eat any to'eva. What's that referring to? Non-kosher food. That's also called to'eva. So, from an Orthodox point of view, there are many prohibited sexual relationships, and a homosexual relationship is one of them. Now, we're not talking about the desire. A person can have different desires. We're talking about acting on that desire. Now, a person who is attracted to both genders, so that, in my mind, is pretty easy. A person might be attracted to their wife and to someone else's wife. Okay, that's very simple. This is a mitzvah, and that's a prohibition. So if a person has attraction that can go either way, this is considered holy, this is not. But for a person who finds the thought of a heterosexual relationship as repugnant, as most heterosexual people would view a homosexual relationship, that person is confronted with a challenge that most of us cannot fathom. And if I were to wake up tomorrow morning with my WhatsApp groups exploding, the rabbis came out, and guess what? Right? Your wife is an abomination. You've got to go find yourself some nice guy. That's what the Torah demands. I don't know what I would do. I don't know what I would do. So if I don't know what I would do in that situation, then I can't look at someone who is in that situation and say, oh, this person. We all have certain things that we keep properly and we don't keep properly, or don't keep as properly as we should. And this want for an intimate human relationship is a very, very core, deep part of being a human being. So for a person who feels that they could only find that in a Torah prohibited manner, I'm not going to judge that person. I am not going to judge that person. The same way that I have things that I do and I don't do as well as I should, I'm not going to judge that person. And if we're going to say, well, that's an abomination, and therefore that, no, that I think is taking our own feelings and our own judging and attaching it to the Torah, because we'll have no problems giving an aliyah to someone who's not so honest in business. The Torah calls that a toeva also. The Torah calls that an abomination also. Right? We have no problems giving an aliyah to someone who's not keeping Shabbos, who doesn't have a kosher home. And this is on that list. And if you're saying or you're feeling, no, this is different, that's you talking. That's not the Torah talking. Oh, but the Torah calls an abomination. Yeah, and it also called abomination the In-N-Out burger that you had yesterday. So don't take your own feelings, your own value system, and say, oh, that's the Torah's value system. And actually, I was approached, this is a number of years ago. I was approached. What was that, Jan? I was approached by a woman, right? Came to talk to me, and she told me that she's lesbian, and she said, would she and her partner be welcomed here if they want to daven here? And I said, everyone is welcome to come daven here. I said, if, as I'm sure, I know she was a very, very fine person, right? What I don't want is someone coming here, with their banner, right? And we are this, we are that. I said we have, we don't have a pride parade. I'm gonna say this to her. We don't have a pride parade for those who are not keeping Shabbos. Chilul Shabbos pride. We don't have that. We don't have pork pride. I eat pork burgers. Right? People come here to daven. What everyone is doing in their own personal, private life, right? So as long as you come here to daven and not with a political agenda, more than welcome, right? And the same way that if people are at the Kiddush afterwards, if people are having a conversation, right? And someone says to someone else, "Oh, are you Shomer Shabbos? Right? Do you keep kashrus?" I don't expect a person to lie. Right? In a private conversation or a table conversation, someone asks you a question, be honest. I wouldn't expect them to say, how could you tell them that you're not keeping Shabbos? No, right? So too, if in a private conversation would come up, oh, are the two of you just roommates or are the two of you partners? I wouldn't expect them to lie. When I'm saying love your fellow like yourself. How would you want to be treated? Judge someone favorably. What would you do in that situation? How would you deal with that in that situation? And even if you say, no, I'd be able to overcome and be strong. Okay. Not everyone is like you. Right? Maybe you can, or maybe you can't. Or I would say it's always easy to pass someone else's nisayon. Someone else's challenge. I should have gotten you a drink of water. Someone else's challenge is always easier to pass. Right? So I think when we have these parshiot which deal with these prohibitions, it's important to keep these thoughts in mind. Okay. Johnny, you wanted to say something? I think she's at the funeral. Okay. I'm actually going to be away. I apologize. The next 2 Tuesdays, my daughter is graduating in New York, and I'm going into New York for her graduation.
Mazel tov. I did want to say about what you were saying about the equality of the abominations in the Torah. Maybe that's why the Re'eh Kamocha, so that we don't single out something
Yeah,
like that
yeah,
to
yeah. That's what yeah,
so that we still keep in mind that we're supposed to love
yeah.
or
Or
how
judge
wouldn't we,
favorably, or and focus on the positive.
right?
Yeah,
And I mean, wouldn't we give ourselves that pass if we found we had that inclination?
I think so. I think we would, or we certainly would struggle with it. I'm not sure. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yes, Kathy.
Well, with all these sentences, these death penalty type, was there room for teshuva, or was it just that's it, you're gone?
Okay, so that's a great question. Well, first of all, realize that the Mishnah tells us a Beit Din that killed once in 7 years. Another opinion says once in 70 years was a murderous Beit Din. So it didn't happen all that often. Okay, when the stars would all align. So the idea of I wouldn't even call it a death penalty, because it's not a penalty, right? This is the capital punishment was a very intense teshuva process. And the idea being that what you've done when all the stars align, witnesses, warning, everything there. So what's happening is that with what you've done, then just going through life and davening and giving tzedakah and lighting Shabbat candles, right? That's not going to do it for you anymore, right? What you need to do is this intense teshuvah. The person would make kiddush beforehand, right? And that's why I couldn't find it. I saw this years ago. The reason we say l'chaim is because the person would make kiddush and they would say lemita, not to life but to death, and the person would do vidoy. It was a very, very intense teshuva process to allow a person to leave this world cleansed from that which they had sullied themselves with, and to thereby go on to the next world. And that's why we have some very strange halachot, Adam Zoman, witnesses who were not actually there. So if they gave their false testimony and got the guy killed, and then they were found to be these false witnesses, we don't kill them. They tried to get the guy killed, but before it actually happened, they were found to be zomin, then they will get a death penalty. It seems counterintuitive. The guys who got him killed don't get killed. The guys who try to get him killed do get killed, the Gemara asks. And the idea is that if they try to get an innocent person killed, then their death penalty can and will atone for them. If they actually got the person killed, then the basin says, I'm sorry, We don't have anything in our toolbox to help you. And God has to take care of this one. We can't. So we don't view it as a death penalty. We view it as a sacrifice is the proxy. This is no proxy. This is the person themselves is returning to their maker, but through a very intense teshuva process. But again, 177, once every 70 years. We'll deal with that more when we get to that later in Parsha later on. That is an important topic to touch upon. Okay, so again, the next 2 Tuesdays, I apologize, I will be away. We'll pick up after that. Okay, good seeing everybody. Be well.